the funniest one is, I can say it here maybe, is that we got contacted by Robbie Williams a couple of months ago, and he was like, "Oh, you made a remix of me." And I remember when David and me made that remix, the record company told us that he didn't like it at all.
Welcome to the Resident Advisor Exchange. This is actually our last episode before we take a hiatus for the summer. So we had to go out with a bang by inviting the two beloved brothers from Belgium. Gents, do you want to introduce yourself?
Yes, I'm this guy's brother. My name is Steph.
And I'm Dimitri Vegas.
I'm actually kind of surprised you know who he is, but we can get on to that another time.
We do.
There is a new Soulwax album for the first time in... Well, it depends where we're keeping count, because technically 8, but also maybe 5. I'm not sure if this is your 5th or your 7th, but...
I agree. But we saw a headline where it was like, Soulwax announced first album in 7 years, and it made us go like, huh?
Yeah, we were surprised as well.
Because we thought we were busy making music.
Yeah, we were like, we've been doing things.
Yeah.
Hey, whoa.
Yeah, and then I saw the headline as well, 7 years, and I counted back. It's like, maybe the Essential album, is that the one they mean? But yeah, we did the EMS. Well, we've done loads of stuff, and it doesn't, in our minds, because we're always busy, I think we sort of forget that it's been a few years since something comes out. And also, by the time something comes out, it tends to be almost a year since we've finished it. So that's also confusing.
At any rate, the album is called All Systems Are Lying. A lot of it sounded really familiar to me, and part of that is because the songwriting is very classic and it's quite poppy. But then I also realised I'd actually heard you play a lot of it on the road last year. So this must have been gestating for at least several years. You've made it without any guitars. I'd love to know the genesis of when the project became fiddling around and when it went from there to being like an album with informed structure, particular MOs, and also, I guess, how the sequencing fell together to what people are going to hear in a few months' time.
That's a lot of questions.
So a lot of questions.
Which one do you want to answer first?
Yeah.
Tell us about the album. How about that?
But I think maybe the interesting part, I don't know if it's the interesting part, but I think for Dave and me, we started writing, and maybe we have to put it in context, because what we do mostly of our time is produce other people, remix other people, or being the DB label. We're very much involved with other people's stuff. And so when it comes to our own music, I think we wanted to have no preconceived ideas and just see what happens when the two of us get into the studio and what comes out without any. So a lot of it in the beginning months was very experimental, just the two of us coming in. And a lot of that turned out to be very piano driven. And I think also I'd gotten a piano for my birthday at home, and I think a lot of it was around that in the beginning. I think we made all these beautiful piano tracks, and then we were like, oh, but we have to play live, because we got like all these. We're like, this is another album we're making. We need to. And I think some of these things then resurfaced in more conventional songs. But the sort of genesis of what we did was, a lot of it was piano driven. Is that good? Good answer?
Yeah, but...
Yeah, this is one of 7 of them.
exactly.
I know, it's like, I just planted a little seed.
It's a good point that it's about the fact that we wanted to do, it was basically to counterbalance that maybe since COVID, it felt like we'd been working more on other people's stuff. And in that, it's not that it's less creative, because it is that is a very it's rewarding, and it is creative to take someone's beginning and make and end it, like help them finish it. So that and also to work towards a brief and all that stuff. So but it felt like the balance was off. And that's why I think we felt this impetus to be like, oh well, we have to find the stuff. Like Steph says, like it's a different part of your brain where you're it's very instinctive. Like you're not working with a specific brief or a specific goal to reach, which is also maybe why it takes so long.
A lot of this record is instinctive and intuitive. Lyrically, how the songs have become. A lot of people now, I mean, we haven't done that many interviews, but the ones we've done, a lot of people have been going deep into the lyrics. And it's kind of, that's why I started off saying a lot of it was experimenting, and a lot of the lyrics just came. They were there. For whatever reasons, we live in this world. That's, those things just came to us. And I guess we were really also excited to see just what came out of ourselves at that point.
The lyrics definitely stood out to me because it felt very like mantra driven. Like there are some phrases that you hook around and just like ride for like 3 or 4 minutes. In fact, I think there are 2 songs on the record that only have 4 songs, which is Pills and People Gone, which opened, and then All Systems Are Lying just says the same thing over and over and over. And that is quite like a distinctive part of what makes the studio records of Soulwax to me, that you usually have like a particularly good hook or a chorus. Like My Excuse is a great example where that was sticking in people's minds for years, and particularly when you're slightly spangled, it seems to be like reaching out to people in quite a probing way. So I'm interested to know how these like mantras hit you. Are you walking around your lair in Ghent with a cup of tea and then suddenly you're like, oh, I've got it, quick to the studio? Or is it like you're trying to say something profound?
The tea part's there. But Pills and People Gone is a very good example where I think, I don't know exactly, Dave, but I think it's something we made on the piano. Just, I have these streams of consciousness where I write a lot of lyrics down. I took up a mic, Dave and me were like, we really want to do this old effect that we know Godley and Cream used to do with this old machine. And we just started doing it. And I said, Pills and People Gone. And I remember thinking, we'll just keep it like this now. But we were never it stayed Pills and People Gone. Like it's a weird thing, but it seemed to fit the moment and the song and everything.
Yeah, we tried
to do something else. We like, maybe we shouldn't call it Pills and People Gone because people are going to see a lot of things into it. But it just fitted it really well. And that's when I talk about the intuitive and the instinctive, that was such a big part of this record. Where in our, let's say, the day job, we're being asked by other people to like, is that a good idea? And then we're like, maybe try something else. So it was it's sort of like a discipline that I think we had lost a little bit, and that we just wanted to see what was in us. And Pills and People Gone is a really good example of that.
It's super cool that you picked up on that thing of well, those are the only 2 examples where we managed to keep it down to just 1 sentence being repeated. But it's something that we when we work, we don't talk a lot, but that's actually one of the things that we did talk about. Like ideally, it's something that really bothers us in songwriting, is that so often we'll hear something and someone's just saying too many, just saying too much. And we only managed to bring it down to those 2 songs where we could do it with 1 sentence. But I think ideally for us, that would just be how we work. Like it's pure minimalism and it's editing down to the core of what you want to say. Sometimes 1 sentence is enough. Unfortunately, in other cases, we didn't.
But I think we've become really good at specifically that. I think there's a million T-shirts we never made that should have been made, and it's a bit slogan-esque in a way. But I also do like you were saying, they become mantras in a way, and some of my favorite music is that. So yeah,
there is something that
good points there, Gabe.
Great, I'm glad. It's something that your friend and mine, Tiga, loves to say, which is that if it feels too simple, like leave it alone. Like that. Well, like sometimes it can be the money shot, and you don't want to overcomplicate.
He's very, very, very good at that. It's something that I think Dave and me have been telling him. I think ever since we've known him and worked with him, he was really good at finding that those two sentences. But even in that, I sometimes I wanted to know more who he was, and that was sometimes maybe the layer I never really got to. Sometimes, I think what we're trying to do is maybe show a little bit more who we are or what the world is around us.
For the vast majority of people who haven't obviously been
Heard
to
this.
your layer in Ghent, it has like an air of like a Bond villain in that, like, you have to like keypad, you have to like scan your retina to get in, and then you walk up the stairs. You walk up the stairs, and it genuinely is like if Dr. No collected synths instead of like trying to destroy nations. Like, it is an unbelievable. It's like the logical conclusion of man caveism as like a sorry, not while you're drinking. My bad. But I'm curious to know, when you have all these ultimate options and you have so many outboard choices that you can make, you have so many synths, you have the world's kit in your hands. How do you know when enough is enough? Do you have an inclination to keep tinkering, or just say, like, this sounds good, I'm going to leave it?
Do you mean enough is enough as in buying them or tinkering with them?
I actually meant on the record, but sure.
All right, so number one, and it's never enough.
Weirdly enough, I think that's something that we wanted to avoid on this record.
Okay.
Is that we didn't really tinker that much. It was basically, if an idea doesn't really gestate within the first half hour or so, then it's not worth pursuing.
It's a very, very good point. A lot of people think we have a vault of a lot of tracks that they've never heard. But I think the two of us, without even saying a lot to each other, if somebody comes up with an idea and we're like, it's a bit too long or this or blah, 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 we just abort it. We don't do it. And it's something that we've been doing for a long time. And I also do think we've become really good at maybe 2 synths, not 25, or it's the whole thing, or it's like, I think the limitations of 2 or 3 machines, or I shouldn't say that because it's 3 drummers, but but I felt with the machines, it definitely is that.
It sort of comes down to the same thing we said about lyrics, is that I think we at least try to edit stuff down to only the essential, and that's the same with it's only the tinkering only happens if the at the very beginning, the thing that like Steph just mentioned, that thing on Pills and People Gone was it's a specific machine that we bought because we'd heard a Godley and Cream record and we couldn't figure out how they had done it.
Dave emailed him.
Yeah, we emailed Kevin Godley and he was like, "Oh, it's actually this prototype that we found." Blah, blah, blah. So we found, after maybe 5 years, we found the actual machine, we bought it, and then we're like, we should try something with it. So that's not necessarily tinkering. That's more like, okay, well, let's just see what this gives, and within, I'd say even 10 minutes, that's the thing that we came up with. So it's not like there's hours and hours and options of like, we'll try this little bit with this synth. I think we're quite straightforward, and that in those cases we do go towards a goal, and I think we know that sort of the tools that we have,
or the pitfalls of of going into something and keep tinkering on it.
Yeah. So luckily that's not a thing on this record. Like, but those records can be fun.
All systems are lying. The groove that we use, we were tinkering and making it, but we were unable to make it again. And so when we had to go play live, we had to go steps back, and it was really hard to fabricate again. They were like, we'll make a live version, then we'll do another version. But so I guess with us, it's like when something really feels good, that's it. Don't go too and don't go into that vortex of like maybe this. We've become wiser.
Something that I mentioned in the slightly over-caffeinated cascade question at the very start. The record is interestingly poppy in some places, particularly Run Free, which feels to me very much like Power, Corruption and Lies, OMD, a sprinkle of Alphaville, maybe that's a dirty word, but like it feels surprisingly radio friendly and upbeat. And then you've got Give Me a Reason, which again to me felt like I must have heard this before. Like this hook seems like it could have been on a trance song from 1999.
Okay.
Like, and these, you guys have always been good at the mantras, but these choruses feel slightly more elevated into like a synth pop realm that was like refreshing and surprising to hear. Yeah, I'd love to know about those two.
Run Free is I think came from like just a little jam, maybe 10-15 minute little jam with synths, and then just Steph came up with these lyrics.
They were just there.
Like Stream of Consciousness just came out
On my iPhone.
In fact, what you hear, like this is what you hear on the record is even
It's my
Steph
iPhone.
singing it into the iPhone.
That's a voice note.
Yeah.
Because we really loved the way, well, maybe Power, Corruption and Lies that is my all-time, would be in my top. If there's a couple of records that have been really important to me, that's one of them. But I guess this idea of singing it in that sort of demeanor, it just felt really easy to do it. And then all of a sudden that chorus came out of me. I have no idea where it came from. Just like we sang it, we're like, oh, but this is chorus. This is full on chorus. And I instead of, how do you say that? Conceptualizing it and going like, should we do this? We're just like, no, this is what came out of it. This is honestly how it came about. But that track was there. And I actually guess when we had Run Free, we were kind of, oh, yeah, we're making a record now.
Yeah, sure.
Now it's getting there. And then to talk about Give Me a Reason, we were already playing some of these songs in different versions when we played live at Soulwax, which again, we're in a fortunate position that we as a band can play a couple of shows live and play like 7 or 8 tracks, try them out, demo them, and people seem to be really, really up for it. But Give Me a Reason is one where I think Dave and me were like, oh, we need something new for the live show that kind of shows the power of the drummers, but it's also kind of like more of a earnest thing. And I think we went again piano. It came from the piano, and it was there.
Yeah, it's going to
really,
be a boring
really
interview
bad,
because we don't really know where they come from. Like it's just like we just that up sounds pretty good. Let's do it. It wasn't. It's very not thought out, which is kind of what we did intend, but it's also why we don't really know why certain things are a certain way. We're good, like when we work with other people, like we talked before, or for other people, we're very good editors, and I think that's it's kind of like a bit of a switch in our brain that we have to do with our own ideas, and I think we are maybe 10 times more harsh with ourselves than we are with other people. Sometimes someone will come to us with like a full-fledged song. It's like 6 minutes long with 3 verses and we'll be like, maybe let's edit it down to its essence. Whereas in our case, we will probably just like, that's cool, but let's throw away 90% of it and just keep that little bit and make that into something. So in particular, those 2 songs, Run Free and Give Me a Reason, that's just, I have no idea. Like we just hitting a few buttons and blah, 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 and stuff comes out and it turns out to be a song.
Well, that was a bit disrespectful,
Dave.
But couple of buttons, blah, blah, blah.
I was going to say, that's electronic music, full stop. Like, that's all. That's literally, this is our
electronic
whole thing.
music by David Dewaele.
In cold blood. I know I keep referring to other people's records when talking about a new record, which is like
that's cool. That's great.
Polaris is the other one that's quite interesting to me because that's definitely darker than some of the records, and it sounds a bit like either Cold Wave, Oppenheimer Analysis, these kind of like weird, like kind of Soviet coded nuggets that you get through, or it sounds like Mary Davidson, in that like I can hear like the slightly sharper end of your sound there. We'll get onto her and we'll get onto City of Clowns in a minute, but that one was interesting because as the record, it feels like you have singles at the front and then there seems to be more sweet-driven songs where like certain instrumentals roll from one to the next, and then it definitely gets a little bit darker and maybe tonally gets like a little bit more probing of the matrix around you by the record's end. That's how I interpret it anyway.
You mean lyrically?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Where were you when we're doing it?
Yeah. We needed you to tell us what we're
Gabe,
doing.
to do. Yeah, it's like I love how you.
This is
you
your first review in
analyze
real
this.
time.
No, it's like wow.
But yeah, it was interesting. It's cool because I thought, I was like, oh, this is going to be like power, corruption, and lies the whole way through. It felt very synth pop, and then there's like a little bit of the sharp elbows towards the back half.
Yeah. Maybe even with false economy. Yeah.
But there's no way we could do power, corruption, and lies, because that band and that record and yeah, we're not like those people. As much as I adore them, I mean, like we wouldn't be able to do it like that, and that would be a conscious decision. And I think this was just like Polaris again. I ended up playing that on the keyboard. It turned into this massive sort of a mantra, which you were like, okay, we're doing this 20 minutes. It's like full on. And then I think we're like, oh, but we can make it into a song, like have vocal melodies, and then up and we were gone. And then I think maybe in a way, not to be, but I think it was sort of an homage to like maybe Suicide and maybe some stuff where you have, but less I think, because we had this sweet thing going on, and then for it to have something edgy come into it and be like, whoa, and then have the 3 drums be the driving force behind it. Because I think live, we nail it really well sometimes. But it's one where if we have it, we have it. Then it's like, whoa, what the fuck's this?
We live in a time where you can tell that there's a lot of people who at least pretend, maybe they do, to know what they're doing. And I think what attracts us about them is that it looks like they don't know what they're doing. And that's kind of how we feel about this record as well. Like it's not like we don't know what we're doing, but we didn't go in with a full-on plan of like, these are the targets that we need to hit. And so in that respect, it does feel like it's kindred.
Interesting. I know that from Dewaele and Essential obviously had very clear through lines.
Yes.
Exactly. So same as we did on night versions, or like it was basically like you hit these
parameters.
Yeah, parameters. Like we have to stay within these parameters, and that will guide the song. And we've done that, and that was something that had worked. But I think for this, we really wanted to. The only thing that we had set out for ourselves really was that we wanted to come out with better songs, right? That's the only thing that we want. It wasn't like we need to hit this. It needs to be this and this and this and this. It was just like let's see what comes out.
Yeah. Cool. Let's talk about 2 other records that have come through your factory in the last 3 or 4 years. When we mentioned Mary Davidson, City of Clowns, and the other, Topical Dancer, which I know it's just like a compliment overload at this point, but it's definitely, I think, one of the best records of its class this decade so far. I think it gets better every time I listen to it. Charlotte is an amazing live performer, really brings it out. But I think for both of them, both acts, there's a very fine tightrope to walk where like you're making rhythmic dance music that people are compelled to dance to, but also infusing like pretty weighty topics lyrically and finding a way to like make that happen without gumming up the machines. And one is obviously talking about the desiccation of people's brains in modernity and because of the technology consuming us. And the other is like very socio-political and like racial elements and just like growing up in a society that looked down its nose at you. And on paper, neither of those 2 things would be compatible with the music beneath them, but they both really, really work. And obviously I know that I'm sure you're proud to have released both of them and have worked on both. And I'd love to just hear a little bit more about those 2, because they're both in their own years album of the year contenders from your label, which is great.
But they're separate. They're 2 different. So Marie's one is different than say Charlotte and Boris's one, because I think Charlotte and Boris we'd known a lot I mean, a long time before this. And I actually think this idea of the two of them working together was something that Dave and me tried to tell them, like, I think it would be good if you guys work together, you write together. And then when we started making the album, I think in a lot of ways, they have there's a sense of humor that Boris, Charlotte, Dave and me have that that can be confusing for other people, but we totally connect in. And then when we were making the record, I think Dave and me were saying like, hey, but when we were in the studio, we would have conversations about systemic racism, how they were perceived in Belgium, how people, a lot of stuff, a lot of big topics. And we talk about a lot of these things. And we said to them, like, I think it'd be amazing if you could, because a lot of people were talking about politically motivated things around them, but in no, I'm not going to say sort of a victimized way, but sort of like, oh, look at this. And I think they had this intelligence to go, but we can make it into a funny thing as well.
Sure.
And be less in your face. And I think that was definitely something Dave and me were pushing them to do, because otherwise it could have been either too funny or just really dark. And so when that record went topical, but it's in the title. When we came up with Topical Dance, I think the four of us were like, okay, I think we know what we're doing here. And so for that album, I think we were kind of the conduit to do that, to be more, to talk about these things and to do it in a clever way, which I think we've done. And then I think for Marie, I think a lot of those lyrics, Marie has those lyrics. She does it, but she's fiercer in the way that she does it. And I think Dave and me were trying to be a conduit for her to find that.
Well, yeah, but major difference is that with the Marie record, she and her husband Pierre, they came to us with a bunch of songs that were in a less worked out way, and like we talked about earlier, like I think our job there is more how does this become that thing which walks that tightrope that you just described. Whereas with Charlotte and Boris, I think we were maybe closer to the origin of like where the song comes from, or why the song was just haha or stuff like that. But with Marie as well, I think there's a couple two that we made in the studio together. But then I think we also helped her out. But she's a force of nature in lyrically. I think that was something that we were drawn to as well. And then when we heard the songs, we were like, oh, this could be...
Okay, so it's like different shades of facilitating
yes,
where someone's trying to go and just how you get them there. Yeah. Just on the topic of working on other people's music really quickly. Obviously for like a slightly older caliber of fan and viewer and listener, they'll be familiar with the glut of remixes that came out 2010s and predominantly 2000s. It's interesting to me that like the Wet Leg remix is maybe one of your most popular ever. The Fontaine's remix is everywhere.
Yeah.
And it'd be interesting to know what it does to the ego of a recording artist when the surface area that most people might be exposed to your work is through someone else's music. Whether most people know you as remixers, and whether you find that like a spike of awareness around a remix will lead more people to your own work, or whether that's just its own thing and it lives, it's independent and it takes a life of its own, but they don't follow the breadcrumb trail back to you.
Quite simply put, I think what you're describing is something that's out of our control. Like we have no control over how people find out about the stuff that we do. So
we also don't do that many remixes.
No, that's
the
another
irony. Thing. That's the irony of it. But when we do one, it seems to have an effect. And when we started off, the remix would just be something that would help us for our own DJ sets. That would be the first. There was like, oh, we need something. I like this song. How can we just make it into? It's turned into a whole other thing where a lot of people are like, I want a Soulwax remix, and you're like, but I don't hear that song. I don't know how to do that. The funniest one is, I can say it here maybe, is that we got contacted by Robbie Williams a couple of months ago. And he was like, oh, you made a remix for me. And I remember when David and me made that remix, the record company told us that he didn't like it at all.
No. What they told us is that he thought it was too expensive, and it was
too expensive.
Honestly, it was like a few thousand.
But
pounds,
it wasn't
so
a positive. It wasn't a positive. So in my head the whole time I was like, oh, he never liked it. But you know what? We did what we liked. But it was so funny that 15 years later he contacted us directly, and he was like, love this. Can I have it? I want to use it in the live show. And it kind of made it. I thought it was also amazing of him to do it, but there are these things that I think a lot of them were made just for our own economy, which is DJing or playing trash or playing Despacio now, or Tame Impala we made completely because we needed it for Despacio. So a lot of them have raison d'être. And that economy is it's different. We still have Despacio, but I do think it's something that maybe the last couple of years we've been focusing more on Soulwax or Charlotte & Boris, Marie, all the other things we do. And also a lot of fashion, which is, I think when we talk about making music for other people, it wasn't just producing. It was also like when Dries' last show was done, or some Hermes stuff or some other stuff. It's a full-on job. But it's kind of exciting as well because you get to play with the separate parts for a Sade record, or we're almost like little kids then in the toy shop. We're like, oh, ooh, ee.
Just so I know, did Robbie text you or did he DM you? Is it an email? Was it a letter? What's the actual form of contact?
I don't know if we should be saying all the, yeah.
But
it was amazing.
Yeah,
it was straight.
Pretty cool. He's cool. We basically.
What did the email say? It's me. It's Robbie. No, it's something like really, really simple.
So his email address isn't, obviously it's not Robbie. No. It's like some random name, and the subject was, "Hey guys, it's Robbie Williams,"
which I thought was amazing just to have that in there.
Hey, no, honestly, that whole thing, it's pretty cool. Like he was just like, I love this. I want to do something with it. Cool.
Can you send it to me? I want to use
send
it.
Send me the stamps.
David and me were like, yeah, it's your remix.
I mean, you're talking to a Brit who grew up in the early 2000s. This is not. I'm not winking at the Robbie thing. We all love Robbie here. Like it's a cool thing to get contact.
Well, so did David and me. So did David and me. And then I just put it out just because we were talking about the remixes in a way, because we don't do that many, but the ones that we've done seem to all have taken on a life of their own.
Probably the last thing I can think about, given that all three of us are varying shades of sick. But DJing, man, how cool, how much fun? Question mark. Is it still?
A lot.
Good. Okay, that's great. That's good stuff.
Yeah.
It feels like, well, it would have happened by the time this goes out. But you're playing with another mutual friend, Palm Tracks, this weekend.
Yes.
When you did Coachella, I mean, you do it most years, but when you did it this year, it was with Salute and Barry Can't Swim.
Yeah.
There's a kind of like a 4ManyDJs overlap thing.
Yeah.
I'd love to know about these, not totally out of your comfort zone moments, but like when you're pairing with people who are maybe like a generation down, like how that comes about, and also like what the chemistry is like in the booth, where it's like there is no pre-existing relationship. You're flying by the seat of your pants. Does it make it more fun?
That's what DJing is, no? Like that's what we like. That's so it feels really natural. No, not natural is not maybe the right word, but it feels not that huge. It's not like we're hugely out of our out of our comfort zone, because it's kind of where we came from. It's kind of how we started with Errol as well, or like you just play. But I think maybe now everything just feels a lot more concentrated. Like bear in mind that we are back to back always.
Whole life.
So.
It's one each, and we sabotage each other all the time, and I've noticed with these, when we do these back to backs, but it's different. I think it's like Palm Tracks will be different than say with Barry Can't Swim or Salute, because I think they have a specific sound, and also we don't prepare at all, Dave and me, and so I think for them it was a bit like, oh, okay, these guys come in, and we just go, yeah, what are we seeing? Yeah, let's go. And we just, I think we're a little bit more, how can I say that? We like to confuse people a little bit.
And we play off them. I think that's
Yeah.
usually tends.
Yeah.
People tend to have a preconceived idea of what they're going to do, which is cool, and we sort of play off that. Like whatever they play, we react to them. Whereas it's not, we don't go in thinking these are the whatever 15, 20 records that we need to hit. Like so, in the case of Jay, like we haven't even spoken, but we'll just see what he plays and we'll play off.
It's it'll be interesting to see.
We did one with Tiga and Peach
on Sona, which was really nice
that
because
worked really well.
she kind of, I think Tiga, Dave, and me were on. I mean, there's a lot of folders that are the same.
Yeah, and there's 20 years of history.
And it was amazing that she just, we were like, oh, you take the wheel, and we'll just fill in here and there, which was nice.
Same with we did one with Errol and Eclair Fifi, and that's also like it's better to let them.
Yeah, because Errol, Dave, and
try.
me, that can be like a 12-hour set if you let us go. Another thing that's interesting, I wanted to say about the DJing thing, in a weird way, a lot of so when we started with Errol, I think the difference with the people you just talked about and where we come from, I think we've always been indie kids in a way. And it wasn't only just one specific sort of electronic music. We would just take whatever we wanted. Just for us, it was the same. I've noticed that's become very different. It's a very different thing. But a lot of young kids want to go back to that. And I've noticed with a lot of people around us that a lot of the things that we made then, or a lot of the things we did then, seem to be something that like, oh my God, what is that? And so we're in this weird world where it's like a circle that goes around. We're back to that in some way. I don't know how
Are we?
No, probably not. But it feels like for a lot of people, that's what. It's like when we did the Workte thing, the big festival in Belgium, and you could see the energy of people. It was almost like a rock concert again. And I was like, oh, I've forgotten. We used to play the same way as we would have been a band, you know, like be like, we wanted people to go out and tear their hairs out and go stay mosh and do things, and it's very different.
I'm going to mangle this, so you're going to have to, do exactly what you said and fill in the gaps here a little bit. You did tell me a story once about, I think it was in Portugal.
Yeah.
So you described it as if you'd walked into like a hellfire and brimstone thing. I think people were like flipping tables over. Someone got ejected. I'm sure there were many of these events, but it often felt preacher.
This particular event, it only happened one time, and it was at the kind of the very beginning of the Too Many journey, if you will. So I think it's hard to say where to start, but like that, there was definitely a thing that happened around 2002 to 2003 where Steph and I would just happen to be the right people at the right time, and a new kind of wave of DJing opened in clubs all over the world. So this particular established, really very still amazing club called Lux in Lisbon booked us for the first time, and the owner of the club was Manel. I think he was maybe 20 years older than we are.
And he'd had a club in Lisbon called Fragile before, which was known for its music taste and stuff like that. And he'd heard about us, but he was like, I want to see what these kids are about. And so they put us in the main room. They put us on a stage, which was also weird because like now it's all DJ booth, but they were like, but put these guys on the stage. And I think what I was trying to refer to earlier was the energy that we used to do. We would just, I think it's also the music that came out at that point, a little rock, Vitalik, how we did things. But it got to such a point where people were like stage diving, and this guy turns around to the booker. He's like, I want these guys. every month. And at the point that he asks him, can we get these guys a monthly? This, I don't know, Satanist guy, like a metal guy, comes on stage, comes under the
So pushes
us away,
comes
then
like goes under the booth and pushes us away,
And
and manages.
throws the table.
Yeah, but just bear in mind this is like how do you describe it? Like one of those like super heavy metal tables with two decks and CD players and a mixer on it.
But
Pushes
vinyl.
the whole thing into the crowd.
And it's the weirdest thing. And then he holds a cross upside down.
Yeah.
And my first thing is like, my records. And so I go straight into the crowd and start picking up my records. Half of the crowd is like flustered. The other half of the crowd really is going for the guy. They're like, what did you just ruin? And then bouncers had to come and they couldn't get him off the stage.
Yeah, it took 3 bouncers.
Yeah.
To take
And then
him.
apparently the reason why he thought we were Satanists, Satan's music, you can't mix Motorhead with this. We were doing the devil's work.
Yeah, and I think it was also the energy, like that energy that was in that room. He
Yeah.
felt like that was potentially dangerous.
We've had a sort of a family relationship with Lux ever since, because we still play there and we've been through many, many things. But that was like a point where music had changed in a way, like those worlds came together. And I guess what I was trying to say is like that energy maybe, or that idea of doing that, it's something that I sometimes see people wanting to know about or hear about or go back to. And maybe even like part of The Weekend Never Dies, when we did the documentary, it feels like a lot of people are referencing back to that or going back to it, but they all come from that same energy, which is kind of I'm going to call it indie rock, but I think Murphy, Dave, me, even
all
Johnny,
optional.
Keith,
Yeah.
all of us, we're rock kids who kind of lived on the periphery of things and had best of both worlds in a way. And that was the thing.
Thank you for remembering exactly what I was grappling towards. Also quite funny that you mentioned that the table was heavy metal, which I know you mean the material, but even then there was like a double meaning which felt quite apt.
It was literally heavy.
I think you're onto the, maybe not the exact point about like people's grasping for like a more euphoric energy, but I have seen it come back. I think sound wise, there are definitely groups who are not DJing, who might have a DJ up on stage. These guys fuckers who are quite new sound a bit like Chuk 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 to me. But like it feels groove oriented indie rock, which has been maybe out of fashion for a bit. But I do think obviously the rise of quote unquote indie sleaze fashion has made people feel warmer towards debasement in some degree that might be bleeding out on a night out where they may be, it could be performative, it could be mimicry, but the energy feels similar because they're ready to go that extra mile. What's interesting about the name indie sleaze is it's the first time in my lifetime that a genre has been like retconned to be different than it was at the time. And I hear all that, you watch these old interviews of people talking about like intelligent drum and bass, being like, we never called it that.
No.
Like yacht rock, where it's like, I just made soul. And indie sleaze is the first time where I've been like, hey, that wasn't the thing, but it stuck. And it probably will have stuck now for time, for forever. Not with your generation, but for the 22-year-olds out there, they probably will always call it that. And I thought that was quite interesting. Kind of makes sense. And if that tag, an indie sleaze revivalism, is what's leading to a return to slightly more like freewheeling energy, it's not the worst thing in the world.
No, 100%. No, that's...
But it's probably, I mean, it might be the case that you know because you lived it. But I think that's always the case. When things are being revived, that second wave is always a bit less... not legit's not the right word, but it's always a bit watered down, isn't it? Even when, I don't know, even like this second wave of mod wasn't necessarily the same as the Who, or there's I think a lot of instances where like where when things get revived, it's always a bit recontextualized, which means that it becomes a bit less, less real. But exactly like you say, if that's the road that leads to more debauchery, yeah, it's great.
The road
Fantastic.
to more debauchery.
Yeah, it's great. I'm all for it.
I think the only thing that sticks in my mind about how it isn't quite accurate is it front loads the indie, and it takes away the slightly more like punky electro, or the fact that like everyone was like a Sabbath and Motorhead fan that happened to then get put next to Franz Ferdinand on a bill, and I think it over prioritizes the guitar enos a bit, which I get. Like you can't have a genre with like 18 adjectives. It's never gonna stick.
But it's also subjective because maybe some people were way more into block party than LCD
but
sound.
there was nothing. But there was also nothing at that time. So I guess the first time we played Trash was at the Annex. It wasn't at the end yet, and it would be the only place that if you were into like indie rock, and that could be My Bloody Valentine, but that could have also been Suede. That could be anything else. That was the night where you could hear sometimes that kind of music. And I think somebody like Harold then, or maybe even Dave and me, I'd never been to a club like that before. Because I remember the first time we played Rolling and Scratching, we played Wall of Sound stuff, like Rythme Digital, stuff that we all liked. And then we played Ace of Spades, and then turned around, and then Lemmy was in front of the DJ booth doing this to you. And so you're like, at that point, I'd never had that connection of it being that place. And it turned into something else. But then I do think that was for us the first time as well, where I think that's how I think DFA or James or all of us, we could meet there. That was because we're all from the same ilk. That was the whole.
And also, it's not like you just mentioned New Order, but like it's not like that mixing of indie and electronics was invented in 2001. Like it had been around, and when there were so many instances of music that, well, talking about DFA or Owl or Optima or us, like these are things like there was stuff from the 80s or 70s, 90s that we all loved that had walked that that line.
And we all play still now.
Not going to get stuck on the legacy question for too long, but it was interesting just before Charlie XCX did her Glastonbury set, which is the climax coronation, the Brat moment. She was playing Crack on the speakers right when she came out. Yeah.
And Work It.
And apparently Work It.
People Work It, Marie Davidson. Because we got people sending us some films like, oh my God, it's Work It right before she goes, even when she walks on stage or something like that. I didn't see it.
And then she came out.
Angel sent it to us. She was like, they're sending Work It. We're like.
And then the start of her set is actually a thing that we used when we did night versions live. We used to do a whole section where we did alternate. Alternate like a rave section that we did, and that's exactly that part's frequencies, that part that she uses to start her set.
Cool. I'm sure she hadn't heard this, but the fact that you guys did Flight FM and Von Dutch, maybe that's a way of reciprocating the favour.
It just seemed to be like a good mix, those two.
Okay, in a slightly more wide-angle way, like we're talking about like cycles and revivers going in front of your eyes, as well as the fact that you can speak to having been like a connecting node to some of your heroes. I'm just interested to know if the buzz of these musical atoms smashing off one another, things going out of fashion, coming back round, just the thrill of that maintain throughout, that you're just like, oh, this has come back, or XYZ has reached back out, or I can see this thing bubbling back up. How intriguing. Because you're obviously very attuned musical minds, I wonder if that is stimulating every time you see it coming back around.
It's a good question. But, okay, the thing, I think when it's confusing, maybe, or a bit confronting, is, for instance, Part of the Weekend Never Dies. I don't really enjoy it. That was getting back into the sort of
why?
Because making that and just looking at myself there and knowing what I went through, it was hard. It was a hard part of my, like we were touring so hard, and I sometimes see it and I see people referencing it. Oh my God, this is the best party ever. It's like the most amazing thing. And something in me goes, oof, I don't know if I'd be able to do that again. That's the only one where I've been a little bit like, oh, okay, cool. I also know a lot of the backstories of how some of those things were, and they were sometimes way more crazy than we edit them into the documentary.
Feels a little bit like a bad acid flashback, maybe in both senses.
Not a bad acid flashback, but it's more one. Like I remember when we were shooting, sometimes I would turn to the camera and look still into the camera while everyone around me was going nuts. There was this conscious thing that I wanted to do, also because I also felt it was a bit crazy around me all the time. And so when I see that image coming back, I also go, oh, already there, Steph, you're in trouble a little bit. Yeah, you're already going, oh, this might get out of hand.
This would be your moment to turn to camera 2 and look dead in the middle of it if you want. But
no, I'm okay. I like how Dave's like, it's all fun.
To answer your question, does that stuff excite us? I think it's the same thing as in the beginning, because it's kind of out of our control. It's amusing, but it's, I think, the thing, maybe the reason why we've maintained doing what we do is because we're always looking to the future. So all the looking back stuff is cool, it's amusing, but it's out of our hands, so it's not something that we can.
It's not something we do. Also, that's one thing. It's something we don't. I remember when like some of these things come back up, or maybe Carrie or somebody else will tell us, but I don't think we're really. It's not something we look for, because like Dave said, we're already working on. For us now, it's Charlotte and Boris, all the other DW stuff, and how we're going to do the show again, and how we do Despacio. And so I guess maybe it's also our way of not having to deal with our legacy or what we do. And we sabotage it by constantly keep doing other stuff.
I think the one time that, and it's not obviously a bad thing because I loved it, but the one time that you probably lent towards it was for the 20th anniversary of As Heard On. But that was also, everyone had been locked down in the pandemic for 18 months. It was a milestone, and it would be like the KLF celebrating like the first time they cut up records. But you haven't done it for, interestingly, right now would have probably been the 20-year sweet spot of...
Yeah, next year.
Well, I guess 21 now, but like that would have been, if you'd been minded to cash in, it would have been around now that you would have been doing 20 years of...
Well,
yet another bad
business decision.
I guess we should have cashed in. We did it only that one. It was called One Night Only.
One Night Only, because we were like, we're only going to do it once.
But yeah, it seemed like it fit that at the time, and I agree that like that didn't necessarily feel like it was looking backwards too much. It was more like
you're acknowledging the importance of it. Like,
and it was just a fun thing to do. Happy, but I think if we've then gone on like a 1-year tour of like touring around the world doing that album, that would have felt wrong or something like that. That would have felt like it's the wrong energy for us. But just that one night, bringing all those people together was special. It was cool.
There's also something we've been doing, which is like, we can be Soulwax, we can be 2Many, we can produce somebody, we can be DW, the label, we can be Despacio with James. I think we kind of need all these things to keep it from being boring for ourselves. And I do think it applies for all of them. I think if we would do one of them all the time, I think it would maybe our anarchist mind would already start working on another one just to sabotage it, because it'd be too much.
No, and the thing that's never been associated with you two in any guise is autopilot. And I think you would end up in autopilot if you just did the Despacio World Tour
That
every
is
night
the hard
without.
one.
I think
Yeah.
you probably sneak off to a local bar with 6 people and plug in guitars and just go for it, just to feel something again.
You know what?
You are very right.
You're
Pilot.
very right. I'm
Yeah.
gonna give. It
You actually
reminds me
said
of a very
something.
good example. We once did. I forget the exact name of which one it is, but there's like one of those rave cruises where you're on a boat.
It's called
it was
Friendship or
Yeah,
something.
sorry. Yeah.
And it's like they go from Miami to an island, and our friends had asked us, like Pedro and
Pedro, Boys Noise, and
Boys
Danny
Noise,
Days.
and Danny
yeah.
Day, they were all like, "You have to do this cruise," and we were like, "Guys, we're not going on a boat. It's the worst idea ever." And so we went onto that boat. They convinced us, and it was Giorgio Moroder, Dave and me, and then a lot of Felix.
Yeah.
There are a lot of other people there. Pedro, but they loved it. They would DJ at the breakfast table. They would do things, and Dave and me were like, "It's like, guys, it's like it's a bit weird, you know."
Well, it's not that we disliked it, but it's just it's like you're being at a DJ
Yeah.
festival for 3-4 days. But
So-
what we did do is we found out that like you're on a ship and it's I don't know, it's 5,000 people, but there's 2,000
There's
crew.
2,000 crew who all come from Haiti, who all live on that boat for 9 months. You're not allowed to speak to them. You know what I mean? You're not allowed to have contact with them or like whatever way. But there's a whole town underneath the ship where they live.
So
And
through
so
the
we-
MC, we managed a way. We were like, what like.
Can
it's
we
all
go
cool.
and play for them?
We want to go play for them in the like little lounge bar that they have, and that guy, the MC, was like, oh, they're gonna
He's like,
love
they're
it.
gonna love it. They're gonna love it.
Be so excited. So we planned it like the whole. It was like Busy P, Boys Noise, Danny Days,
This
Stephanie.
felt to us a bit like us being like, oh my cool, we found the cool, like we're gonna.
yeah. And so we go and they find it like a little DJ booth and they bring it down and we start playing and we're thinking we're like, oh, we're playing a bit of disco and a bit of like and like nothing. People just like sitting at the bar, like annoyed that these guys are making noise.
No, but they were
in their
also
bar.
like, you white guys, what are you doing here? Like, you bunch, sorry to say, it was not. And we thought we cracked the code because we're like, we're in the real place.
Until Danny Days plays Rihanna.
Danny goes,
And
Rihanna.
then it just goes off. And then we just did a wedding DJ set and everyone loved it. And,
they loved
that went
it.
off.
And
Yeah.
then from that moment on, when we're on the ship, they loved. But it was also a good example of like, you just, if you're DJing, you kind of have to adjust yourself to these situations. And
Yeah, it's a good
but that
example
was
of what
a-
you just mentioned. Like what it's not that we. It was fun to do the cruise, but it's more fun to do the people, for the cruise.
We did it in Bestival as well once. In Bestival, they had booked us to play Soulwax and DJs and Soulwax as well. But we already were doing night versions, and we flew in, and I remember we said we had little Dave, our guitar player, with us. We're like, Dave, tonight we're gonna do night versions. We're just gonna not do Soulwax. We're gonna do the other one. And we did it and we killed it. It was like the most insane party. But he was like, how can you make the decision an hour before? I'm here in Bestival. And I think that thing is maybe the thing that people hate the most of us, but it's the kind of thing that we need. This idea of going to Phonica tonight and have no records, but I'm in a record store, so what can go wrong? It's that idea. It's this idea of pushing yourself always a little bit to not, you call it autopilot, but it's maybe it becomes too easy.
Yeah, and bombing on a cruise ship will kind of remind you what it feels like. To just be like, they're not in the palm of my hands at all.
No, yeah, it was fun. It was cool. It was good. It was good.
I have to give Boys Noise, Alex and Danny and all of them props because they were saying this is an amazing thing because all these kids, and we were a little bit snobby about it. But then after we did that, and everyone on the cruise was like, oh, you guys went down, and it was that kind of a thing. Then we ended up DJing in a guy's room with like, and like it just felt like, oh, okay, I understand now, like, so we also had to adapt ourselves to the whole.
We're not going to have time to add all of this on,
No,
trust
no,
me.
no, no,
but
no,
I
no.
do think that anecdote speaks to why you've always had like a good core of people loving you in America, because there is something that it is a little bit less. It's caught up a bit, but it's a little less developed as a stuffy electronic culture, which means that they feel people who have commonalities with, you know what, I'm going to go out on a limb and make a bit of a fool of myself in this way has always like clicked, which is why I think 19-year-olds in the desert who don't have a Scooby who you are will walk into the back of the tent at the Gobi and be like, oh, this is popping off. I wonder what this is.
Yeah.
Whereas if they went to go see, Boards of Canada, God forbid, if they ever reunited
that
and
would have been
flop at
amazing.
Coachella, but you know what I mean. Like, it definitely probably isn't going to click for a 19-year-old.
But it was the same with Despacio
bikinis.
at Coachella. What we did it the first time. I think we were like, in our heads, James, Dave, and me were like, we'll be playing for a couple of hundred people. That'll be it. And then it turned out to be one of the biggest things because all these kids were like, one, we had air conditioning, but secondly,
I think that's a big thing.
but also they loved this idea of all this music that they had no idea. One kid came up to me. It was really funny. He was like, this is the best thing ever. But he's like, sorry, can I swear? It's like, fuck you for putting, for taking off Shazam. And I'm like, what do you mean take it? He's like, yeah, you disabled Shazam. And I'm like, I didn't disable Shazam. We play the records minus 12. That's why you can't Shazam them. And it was the best thing. But it also kind of made me go, oh, of course, that's his culture. It's like, what is this track?
As if you were controlling 5G mast and just knocking it down.
Exactly. But like, he was shouting it to us. And
he wasn't being funny. Like, he genuinely thought you knocked it out.
Serious, which was beautiful. It was I was like, no, it's because those are real records. And he's like, wow. And I'm like, we're playing the minus 12.
Real records.
That's why. It was amazing.
All right, gents, thank you.
Cool.
And for
Thank
the
you.
record,
Thank you.
I didn't want to say at the start, up there with the synth pop albums of the year. It's really, really good. Really, really, really good. Very deep, enjoying it a lot. All systems are lying, but I am telling the truth. So, thank you.
Cheers. Thank you.